This is just a short beat to give some sense of finality to the end of the battle, but ultimately it wasn't completely necessary, but it was a nice beat for Magneto.
What did I miss? It's over.
If I could save time in a bottle, the first thing that I'd like to do is to save every day till eternity passes away, just to spend them with you. If I could make days last forever, if words could make wishes come true, I'd save every day like a treasure, and then again I would spend them with you. But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. I've looked around enough to know you're the one I want to go through time with. If I had a box just for wishes and dreams that had never come true, the box would be empty except for the memory of how they were answered by you. But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. I've looked around enough to know you're the one I want to go through time with.
Well, wir kommen aus Deutschland und wir tanzen und trinken und machen Spaß. Ja, sehr schön.
Your ass up, cause it's time to go beast mode. Beast mode. ass up because it's time to go beast mode.
No more superpowers. You can sling. Go back. Go back.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. We can't actually hear action or anything in here.
Wait,
Sorry,
we're shooting?
guys. That was it. You're like, whoa.
Are we shooting?
We're the X-Men.
Forget everything you think you know.
All of it.
Whatever your parents taught you.
Forget it.
Whatever lessons you learned in school.
School's for heads.
None of that matters anymore.
You're my favorite.
You're not students. You're not kids anymore.
Unfortunately.
You're X-Men.
Yeah, let's go. Have a time.
Very good. Very good.
You're really going to take part in all this killing and destruction?
It's all I've ever known. That and extreme patty cake.
No, it isn't. You've just forgotten.
You like movies?
Some.
You like
Why?
X-Men?
I love X-Men.
Sorry.
We've cut. Thank you.
Sophie, okay? Bad guys?
I said take.
I'm hungry.
So am I.
Lunch. And
Speed.
lunch. What about lunch?
What did I miss?
Who is he?
Let's go again.
Und gleich wird's spannend.
Max, darfst du den Schlappen fahren? Hausen?
Ja, ja.
What are you doing?
Watching the Roseanne Bar.
Well, that worked out okay, right? Yeah, thanks for the info.
Everything's okay.
We're here.
Let's get out of here.
Cut!
I think I just
Let's go.
I buried it with my family. And now I'm with this guy. The blue guy.
Cut!
That's a nice lilac sweater, by the way. see you've got a new fancy digital watch as well.
Debasing what we're doing. You and your poutine farts debasing. All right, let's do it.
That's my message to the world.
Real mature.
Where is Magneto?
We don't know.
Do you know?
No.
Does anybody know? What are you looking at?
Check his Facebook!
Action. Hold on now. I'll give you the cue for the minutes.
Come back down now. Come back down now.
What?
Sorry, I stood on your toe. Well, it's not even your toe.
James, what's your body language gonna be like?
It's going to be like free-flowing, open, and yet inviting. But it's clearly saying that you can't abuse me. Jane! Jane! Billie Jean! I'm Kurt.
This is, Kurt.
Kurt Wagner.
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 Welcome.
He's my illegitimate son from Azazel. He was born in...
Oh, you've been Azazel too? Great. Okay, brilliant.
Goodbye, old friend.
I love your body.
I love my body too. Every Tuesday night. And I think of you.
I like him. He's funky.
Thank you, go back. Yeah. Good.
It feels good!
You happy with that? Because that seemed weird.
I'm just saying, Empire is still the best. It's the most complex, the most sophisticated. Wasn't afraid to have a dark ending.
Yeah, but come on, if it wasn't for the first one, you wouldn't have any of the rest of the movies.
One of the things this movie does is it introduces a new generation of X-Men into the franchise. We see the coming-of-age stories of young Nightcrawler, Storm, Scott, and Jean.
For me, it's particularly exciting because I directed X-Men 1 and 2, so here I get to now introduce famous characters, but as children, that are nothing like their characters would ultimately become as adults. And that, for me, was one of the most exciting parts about the younger cast.
It makes me bitter, firstly, and angry, and feeling of being displaced, being resigned.
It's nice to have fresh blood, just from a professional point of view, just to have some fresh faces, because frankly, Michael and I are really sick of each other. Nick and I don't talk anymore. I think that was probably my favorite tree.
Does that mean I'm expelled?
Oh, on the contrary. You're enrolled.
A lot of the time when I'm writing, I'm imagining actors playing the parts. And in the case of Scott, I was imagining James Dean, like young James Dean, Rebel Without a Cause, playing the part. And so what we were looking for was someone like that, someone who had this sort of very quiet rage in him.
I had seen a few films that Ty Sheridan had done. I met with him. I found him for his age to be fiercely intelligent, asking all the right questions about character, motivation. And so I felt that he would portray a very rambunctious, a very angry, young Cyclops.
Walking in onto the set and looking down at the X on the floor is when it really hit me.
Ty kind of brings that vulnerable, scared, but also not wanting to show that Scott is kind of a terrified young boy, and he's a new kid in school, and he just wants for everyone to respect him and look up to him, but he can't be that person.
I remember, like, the first time I met the kid, he reminded me of my own little brother with the same age. So, immediately hit it off.
I think one of the biggest challenges to the role is that it's a lot of face acting, because you can't see your eyes, and I would say that a good portion of my acting is here.
When you give a character dark glasses to wear for the entire film, it's very, very, very challenging, especially a young actor. So one of the things that Ty has also is he has a very expressive face and he has a very expressive mouth, and so those things help when you're taking away one of an actor's biggest weapons.
You're still scared of me. Hey, I have special glasses now.
They're not scared of you, they're scared of me. You're not the only one who can't fully control your powers.
Jean was another fun character to write and cast because we wanted to do something that was very different than Famke. She's sort of like an outcast within the outcasts, so there's nowhere for her.
I'm a terribly huge fan of Game of Thrones. I've always loved Sophie Turner. I became friendly with her through a mutual friend, and I thought she would just make a perfect young Jean. Her talent, her physical appearance, it was just the right casting.
She came in and she auditioned, and she just blew us away. I mean, it was unquestionable. There was actually a monologue about the first time she felt her powers and how scary that was and how it actually was the moment when her mother died.
I was 10 when the voices started coming. At first, I thought it was all a bad dream because it was happening during the nighttime, but then it started coming during the day, at school, in class. I thought I was going crazy. And then I tried to control it, but that only made it worse. And then one day, I was coming home from school with my mom, and I got in her head. I didn't mean to, but I did. And then she lost control of the car, crashed into a tree. I could feel everything she felt in that moment of her death. I could hear her last thought, and then I woke up.
And I just remember I was looking around. There were a lot of grown-ups that were pretty choked up watching her do it.
I'd watched all the movies, and when I was really young, my brothers always used to read the comics, so I always used to steal a couple of their comics and read it. And Jean was always my favorite.
You will learn to control your powers, and when you do, you'll have nothing to fear. Most of my stuff has been with Sophie. She's doing an amazing job, and Charles, in the history of X-Men, he's got a really quite profound connection to her. He understands how hard it is to have the power that they share. He was very close to her and very protective of her and kind of parental and fatherly towards her. Thank you, Jean.
Hold on! What did I miss?
For Nightcrawler, I was looking for somebody who had a lot of pathos and sympathy, who just wants to show people a good time and use his bizarre looks and talent to entertain people. Cody Smith-McPhee just got such a warm heart, and he's so intelligent, and he has an amazing philosophy about life and a depth, and as I established in X-Men 2, Nightcrawler is a very religious character. So I thought that these qualities could carry into young Nightcrawler.
I did watch X2 and used the whole Marvel universe of all the Nightcrawler's information, and from that I kind of just built what I think fans loved in him so much, and that was his traditional kind of happy, swashbuckling, joyful, but very faithful, vulnerable Nightcrawler.
Cody stepping into Alan Cummings' shoes has got to be a big task, and he's just great. He's also killing it with the accent.
I'd like to go to the mall.
The costume I love the most is his traditional circus outfit because it has so much aging to it and character and so much history in it, and it really resonates with, I think, Nightcrawler.
I found an old jacket in the throwaway, crazy back room of Western costume on the floor. A stained old circus jacket with these incredibly fantastic pointed tails, held together by a string, this thing. We tried it on Cody when he came for his first fitting, and he had the perfect frame to wear something like this. So we recreated that.
You're
Not blue? Looks like you and I have that in common now.
I'm blue. I'm cut.
Nightcrawler was very interesting because we had to base it somewhat on what was done for Alan Cummings. So we had to adapt what was done on Alan and make it fit on Cody.
How you doing? It's actually quite simple when you watch it. It's a few steps that's like transfers of the kind of scars and then airbrush, and then most of the time it takes is the beautiful shading that they do to kind of make it all pop. And then there's teeth and contacts as well.
One of the main improvements that we've done on the makeup was this tail. We came up with this kind of kinetic moving tail. It's a tail with an inner armature that has all sorts of tension on it so that whenever the actor moves, the tail moves on its own, basically.
I think fans will be happy with that depiction of him. But yeah, it's amazing to see how all these different lanes come to collaborate and create such a great one piece in the end.
I'm very excited to see your culture.
The only thing American about this place is that it used to be British.
This is Scott. He's new here too.
Part of the fun of the X-Men universe is it's so richly populated, and Jubilee was another student at the school, one that we get to spend some time with, although we hope to spend more time with her in chapters that lie ahead of us.
In this particular film, she doesn't have a large role, but I don't know where the character's gonna go. So in casting Lana Condor's young Jubilee, I wanted to introduce her and bring her into the film.
This is the X-Men. I'm still in shock. Every day I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't even believe it.
For Jubilee's costume, we just couldn't stop. I think she ended up with 3 costumes in the movie. We must have had 25 costumes for her. I mean, and I could have thrown a dart in the dark and picked one I liked. You know, they were just all good.
Everything that I wear is very, very much from the comic book. I might as well have been taken from the comic book and just thrown into the film.
Ah! Jesus!
It's fun for the fans to be introduced to all these new characters. What's great to see with all of these actors is you can see that it means a lot to them coming onto this, and they really work hard.
Luckily, we have what I think is the best cast you could hope to assemble for something like this. So we've been gifted with incredible tools and an incredible leader in Bryan Singer to kind of help make sure that these stories continue to thrive.
Cut. Auf Wiedersehen.
When we first meet Apocalypse at the beginning of the movie, it's thousands of years ago at the height of ancient Egyptian civilization, and he is treated and imagined to be a god. And he has 4 horsemen that are around him who are other people with mutant powers, and they're protecting him and supporting him.
He was betrayed in ancient Cairo, and for him, that was meant to be the center of the universe. But the thing is a god if no one worships him? And so in the 80s, the first thing that he sets out to do is find followers, and he finds the 4 horsemen.
We've got Angel, Psylocke, Storm, and Magneto. All of them are, at some point in their lifespan, rejected, marginalized, and also feel like they don't belong to anything.
He can manipulate matter at a grand scale, he can block psychic power, he can do all kinds of things, but one of his greatest powers is his power of persuasion.
Come and see. He finds people that are in need, people that are in a very dark part of their lives that are searching for something. He zeroes in on these people and reads them and figures out what it is that they need to feel fulfilled, to feel strong.
In exploring the idea of who Apocalypse thinks he is, I not only studied religion, but I also looked at cults. And cults very often have 4 aspects to them. They have a political wing, a military wing, a youth element, and then often a sexual wing.
You don't know your own strength, but I do.
To me, Magneto was the political wing, because he always had a political point of view. Angel was a fighter, pure rage. He was the military wing. Young Storm is a street urchin just trying to scrap up a living. Very vulnerable. She was the youth wing and the easiest to recruit. And then lastly, the sexual component, Psylocke. She knows what she wants, and she uses her sexuality to get it.
I want you to feel the full reach of your power.
We are all looking for someone or something to give us a purpose.
He is basically saying, you don't have to worry. I'm here. I am your god. If you treat me as such, you will reap all of the benefits.
What are you doing?
Making you stronger, my goddess.
We loved the idea of Storm being one of the Horsemen because the idea of someone that we know to be a hero. Later on in the movies, seeing her sort of origin, be a villain origin, was interesting.
When I was casting Storm, to be really honest, I was looking for young Halle Berry. I couldn't say it any clearer.
Halle portrayed Storm in her goddess queenly moments. But for my Storm, she's a little bit more reckless. She's a little bit more emotion-driven. She's very confused at who she wants to be when she grows up.
He grabs her, he heals, because he can heal, grabs her, and then she turns into Mystique, and that's when I'm gonna push it on you.
It actually wasn't a call that I got the role, it was a tweet, which was pretty exciting. I got a call from my manager saying, Bryan Singer tweeted something out and we're not too sure if it's for certain, so just hold on. And I was like, hold the phone. He tweeted me? Bryan Singer tweeted me, he tweeted me, are you sure? And so I got all excited.
Alex is great, and she's great to work with, she's great fun, and she's got a great arc in this storyline, and I think she's doing it really well.
We are looking for mutants. Since you know where to find them, we came here.
I have a Kenyan accent, which is not easy, and I'm super strict about it, and I'm always like listening to myself whenever I'm practicing at home and stuff, and it's just about getting the accent right. And then I'm speaking Arabic as well, which is super cool, but very hard. Lezem nimshi min hina, yeah, because the lezem can have like a little bit of a thing,
That's
right?
lezem in the
Lezem.
Oh my god.
Lezem.
Wow.
You're just amazed by my Arabic right now.
Yeah,
it's 360, you guys. 360.
As often as possible, Bryan wanted the costumes to look like the comic. And there was a particular Storm costume that I thought would work for her now. In the comic book, it's like an evening dress or something. Okay, well, she can't be in an evening dress, but the lines are there. The colors are there. And again, the references, what we see in ancient Egypt.
We're giving Storm some powers and abilities that she hadn't really explored before, and hopefully making her cooler than ever.
I'm really excited because in this movie, you really get a chance to see her fight with all of her might.
We had lots of interactive, big, bright lightning strikes on set, which are incredibly bright. Whenever she comes out, you could tell we were about to start shooting her because the entire set would be flashing.
It's all about trying to choreograph that stuff, especially lightning, because it's like a 3-frame event. It's moving so fast that you can't just do it frame by frame. You have to run it in continuous motion.
There is a shot in this movie where she travels down a lightning bolt. It's a blink or you'll miss it moment. You'll see the silhouette of her coming down in the lightning bolt. It's a great, heroic shot.
You know you can kill everyone in this room.
That's why when you come in, it's just more like, hey, I've got my hand on you.
Psylocke was an interesting one because that was actually a very late-breaking decision. That came very late in the process. And as the notion of both one of the Horsemen, but just a unique character, she's got great powers.
At one point, we sort of imagined that the abduction of Charles would qualify as a 4th Horseman. But late in the process, we were looking at the final sequence of the movie and the fact that the pyramid needed to be protected, and suddenly we're like, well, there's 4 sides of a pyramid, not 3. It'd be good for him to have 4 people that could protect him. We spent a lot of time looking on the internet and saying, what do you want to see in an apocalypse movie? And it seemed like the most popular choice was Psylocke, and it was something that Bryan and I got excited about.
Horseman!
Olivia Munn was literally the first person any of us thought of, and we thought was probably not somebody we'd managed to get, but thankfully she's a massive X-Men fan and was really excited by the prospect of playing the part.
She adores the comic book, and she loved the character of Psylocke.
Is this my stand-in?
Hello.
She's had a wig put on to match my natural locks.
This color looks amazing on you.
Thank you, I know. Lavender, ladies in lavender.
It's the 80s, a lot of color.
Angel.
What I was going to say is that Olivia has taught me more about Psylocke than I knew about Psylocke, and that's been really helpful. So it's nice to have an actual fan acting in my film.
It's the coolest thing that has ever happened to me. It's a big honor, and she's a fascinating character, a telepath, telekinetic mutant, and she has this amazing ability to create anything with her mind, which is something that she uses when she creates her sword with her hand. Once I knock and I come back, it should be like right there.
Olivia has a lot of elaborate fight sequences, some that are quite dangerous, a lot of stunts she wanted to do herself, so she trained very heavily in martial arts and in sword fighting and all kinds of things.
I've never done sword work before, and I started doing all of the sword work and then wire and stunt training, and then going and doing taekwondo and karate and boxing. And so when I'm not on set, I have about 6.5 hours of constant workout.
She's been working non-stop since she arrived with her sort of blade work. I mean, at the beginning, it was non-existent, and now she's like, watch, I can do a backhand as well. And she's like flipping the samurai sword from hand to hand.
Her mixture of her physical samurai sword, which she sometimes likes to use, or her psionic blade, which she sometimes likes to use, which then turned into kind of a whip, is really kind of fun.
It's an energy bond formed between molecules that allows it to sever the bonds of lesser bound substances, which is mostly everything.
Great. All right, shooting.
We had Olivia Munn with an interactive light glove that would spill light on other characters. And we could use these interactive lights with her while she was on set.
Psylocke's costume is straight from the comic book. It's a latex suit made by a sex shop in Los Angeles. Okay, there, okay, that's who made her costume.
Psylocke was always drawn in this very sexual way, but she always had substantive plot lines. She was a fighter, and she was skilled, and she's strong, and she's fierce. And it's important to me that it doesn't matter how she's dressed. It has no bearing on how strong and lethal she is.
You see the booze, you see the broken wing, you see the broken man, and you say, and then it's, let's go.
Angel's a character I think we've all really liked and thought belonged in the universe with us. And the idea of casting him as a really dark figure fit well to our story.
Angel is Warren Worthington III, who in the comics, he's like a billionaire playboy. I'm just so thankful to be taking on this role, such an iconic character.
I was looking for somebody who was angelic and very handsome, but also had a vicious side to them.
Ben is killing it right now. He has been working so hard at Angel.
He's been training like crazy to get into the right physical condition. He's adhering to a really strict diet, and his focus has been just very humbling to see.
I did train hard. I did train like 6 days a week and a lot of dieting and whatnot, just to try and look as superhuman as possible.
Ben always had to be aware that he was carrying wings, and he got quite good at it, and you can see it in his performance. But when you're watching it without the special effects put in, it looks quite weird.
I'm constantly reminding myself that I've got 2 wings on my back. How would that hold my posture? How would that change the way I stand? And sometimes I'll stand next to someone and I'll turn like that, and I realize I can't do that because my wings would just, knock them over.
The wings were incredibly complex. It turns out feathers are quite amazing things. There's a lot of different pieces to the structure of a feather, and the main thing is the lighting on the wings.
The organic natural feathers, although they look very regular, have really subtle variations from feather to feather. It's like fingerprints. No two are exactly the same.
The way the feathers work and flex against each other or pop out of place and then shuffle back in. These are all small bits that animation and lighting work together just to get it just enough real to sell it.
I want to give you something.
There's nothing you can give me that I want. When Apocalypse approaches him, he's physically weak. His wings have been crippled, and he's very angry to Angel. His wings are everything, he's so proud of his wings. So the fact that he's lost them is devastating.
He's going from an organic wing to a technical wing. His wings allow him to shoot these feathers as projectiles, which would be kind of useless if it were just real feathers.
Ben fully contorted himself and fully imagined that his body was being torn open.
Metal wings had a much bigger structure than his feather wings, so we had to devise a way to figure out where this extra structure was coming from. And we ended up popping his ribs out and bending them back through his flesh and then covering those with metal, which is a pretty intense scene.
The suit that he has as Archangel probably helps support those metal wings. I love my costume. First time I saw it, I was kind of in love with it. I love the gold flecks. I love the silver. I was kind of in awe of it.
His costume is a bit more delicate because he is in a lot of action sequences and flies more than anyone else. So we had to think about his movement and him being able to move.
In the transformation with this beautiful suit and the metal wings, these tattoos appear and his hair goes and he just has this strip of curl locks with the tattoo design. I made them from the ancient Egyptian alphabet all over his head.
One of the most startling things about this film, there's a moment early in the movie where you meet Magneto and he goes home to his wife, and there's something shocking in Magneto's eyes, something we've never seen before: peace. If Apocalypse had never come from the grave, maybe Magneto would have lived to a ripe old age with grandchildren and a pension plan and a normal, happy life.
I think the reason that he joins Apocalypse is because his wife and child have been killed in front of his eyes, and just as his mother and father suffered the same fate.
Is this what you want from me? Is this what I am?
And it's sort of a plea in a way. And then in the next scene, Apocalypse turns up to him. So in a way, it's almost like he shouted out to God and he got an answer, but not from the person that he thought he was talking to. It's just something of a much darker force.
I'm not here for them. I'm here for you.
When we were playing that scene, I always thought that he looks at the people in the factory and then he looks to Apocalypse and he makes his decision to join this person because he's so filled with rage and revenge.
Michael's costume is very beautiful. I thought of the Chrysler Building. There's a lot of deco-y references.
This is my favorite Magneto outfit to date. I think there's something very sort of Roman or Centurion-like about it that I appreciate.
This is a very character-driven franchise. It's the most important thing to the franchise, is getting great actors who commit to the drama of the movie. When I, as a writer, write those scenes the way I would write any scene of a man losing his daughter and losing his wife, another man feeling exposed, those are all the core themes of these movies. They just happen to manifest with the added detail of superpowers.
Felt power like this before.
I think the reason I wanted to do Apocalypse was because with each X-Men film, I want them to always be different from each other. Where X-Men Days of Future Past dealt with time travel and robots, technology, things like that, this film deals with ancient mutantism, with a mutant who thinks he's a god.
It felt like it was time to tell a story that was not only bigger in its threat to the world, but also a little larger, almost cosmically.
For the first time, it's truly a global threat to all of mankind, mutants and humans alike.
I saw the end of the world.
It's huge. The stakes of this one are the survival of humanity as a species.
That's the scope of Apocalypse's power.
Let's go to war.
It's thousands of years of storytelling, and then there's so many characters. The iconic ones from the first films and their younger versions, and also all the people from First Class and Days of Future Past.
It's nice to see the origins of these characters like Jean Grey and Cyclops.
These films live and die by their fan base, and one does feel obligated, referencing to things that they've seen in the comic book, but also revealing new stuff and breaking certain rules in order to bring surprising elements to the fan base.
This is our 7th or 8th X-Men movie, if you count the Wolverine movies, and so by the 7th or the 8th, you need to do something, I think, that's gonna feel fresh and bigger than what's come before.
This is the culmination of all the films really coming to this point. It's in some ways the X-Men film that people have been waiting for a long time.
One of the things we did with Days of Future Past is we changed the timeline, because in the previous X-Men movies, the world didn't learn about mutants until X-Men 1 in the early 2000s. In Days of Future Past, because of the time travel element, we changed the rules. We changed the reality of 1973 onward.
What's the last thing you remember?
We're kind of moving through time, so I can either take the universe into new places, or we speak about time's immutability, how time kind of wants to go back to where it once belonged. So maybe this is actually a prequel to X-Men 1, 2, and 3. So it's kind of a game that we're playing that never really has been done before.
As everyone knows, the existence of mutants was first discovered during the Paris Peace Accords after the Vietnam War in 1973.
When we come back in '83, we are coming to a world that has long embraced mutants, even to some degree celebrated them and fetishized them.
They're mutants in all facets of life, living integrated lives into the normal human world.
They still hate and fear us. It's just harder to see because they're more polite about it. I got sick of living that lie.
And that's why you're not in your natural blue form.
We find Raven is slightly in hiding because she's become too notable a celebrity and is uncomfortable with that.
You're her. It's a hero.
I'm nobody.
Raven has become sort of the Harriet Tubman of mutants. She likes saving mutants one by one and then sending them on their way.
Eric left the last film maybe on the brink of a change, having to really question who and what he was.
He's abandoned his war against humanity, and he's living, I believe, as his parents probably lived.
He's gone into hiding and has been moving around quite a bit for a few years and eventually settles in Poland and falls in love with a woman, and they get married and they have a child.
That's going to be your assignment for tomorrow. Top marks, everyone. Class dismissed.
Charles, we find him back at the mansion, and we see the school is flourishing.
He's a teacher who takes in waifs and strays and people that the rest of the world doesn't have a place for. And him and Hank together run this school for gifted people. Hank's grown up a lot, I think, in the space of those 10 years. He's kind of in his lab building all his gadgets and gizmos, and I think he's fairly happy, you know. Charles is in good spirits, the school's going very well. I think he enjoys being a teacher and having the kids around, so happy days.
See you all soon.
This might sting a little.
Days of Future Past was such a big step for us, bridging the two casts.
Charles.
Managing both past and future, rewriting in some ways the landscape. Very challenging to think about how are we going to expand the universe further.
It began with what's the challenge, what's the conflict, what's the threat of the film. Very quickly we got to Apocalypse because he is the most powerful mutant that's really ever existed in the X-Men universe.
It felt so different from the other X-Men films, and plus Apocalypse is such a strong and complex character.
It was Louise Simonson who made this character. That was her assignment, to come up with a new super archvillain. And every new writer, every new comic book artist would come in and they'd do their own version of Apocalypse. And so when it came time to make the film with Bryan Singer and with Simon Kinberg, the fact that we were going to get to make our version of it, I thought that was such a fun challenge.
I think lots of people have wanted to see Apocalypse come to life in the X-Men franchise, and it's finally happening.
I'm a huge X-Men fan. I grew up knowing the comics and loving the world and, of course, the movies. So I was really excited that they were bringing in the Apocalypse storyline.
Apocalypse is someone who survived for millennia and various civilizations all over the world, being treated as a god and imagining himself as not a god, but God.
Why?
Elohim, Shen, Ra. I've been called many names over many lifetimes. Civilizations rise with his help, and when they're going in the wrong direction, as he says, he clears the forest for new growth.
The film begins in ancient Egypt, where Apocalypse is about to transfer his consciousness, his being, into a younger mutant who has the ability to heal, like Wolverine, like Sabretooth, Lady Deathstrike, like other mutants. This will enable him to live forever.
One of the things that's so interesting about Apocalypse is, unlike Magneto, it's not a man versus mutant struggle for him. It is a weak versus strong.
His only care is who survives, who's the strongest, and who devotes themselves to him.
Apocalypse just represents a good old-fashioned, I want to kill everyone. Why? Because I got it. I want to rule the world. Why? Because it just feels good.
Charles! Show yourself!
When we started thinking about the Apocalypse story, there was truly only one actor that we ever wanted for the part, and it was Oscar Isaac.
Oscar has the challenge of playing what is kind of a larger-than-life character, but because of his skills, he does it with such authenticity and such dramatic integrity that he's really the anchor of the movie.
I was a huge X-Men and X-Factor fan. Since I was little, I would collect the comic books. And for me, it was just very exciting because as a fan of not only of Apocalypse, but of the comic book, in a way, I felt like I was the inside man. I was gonna be there to try to make sure that we steered him in a way for the kid in me that used to collect the comic book. What would I want to see?
I'm just such a fan of his work. It just gets better and better, and he's just really smart and very sophisticated in his approach to the work.
It's so funny working with Oscar because he's the nicest, funniest man, and then they call action, and he's evil, and he's crazy, and he's doing these really insane things, and then they call cut. Touch me. And he's back to Oscar.
He's one of the best actors out there, I think. Some of his speeches as Apocalypse are just fantastic.
You can fire your arrows from the Tower of Babel, but you can never strike God!
To be out there in that heat every day under all that makeup and under all that gear, and then trying to act and emote and be compelling and convincing and commanding is really challenging, but he's superb.
Oscar's costume was incredibly difficult to build. First, we start with these very detailed costume sketches. Then all the fabrics he wore were created and made specially for him.
It had 13 moving pieces to it. There was these layers upon layers to give it a very complex look. It was 3D printed, there was gauntlets, there was gloves, there was leggings, there was wild boots, chest piece.
We wanted him to feel larger than other people in the movie physically. We wanted him to have that sort of ancient, mythic, godlike look to him. And all of that's a little more sci-fi and radical than we've done in the movies to date.
And action.
One of the challenges that the fabrication department at Legacy FX had to do was create this fantastic looking armor that looks heavy, looks metal, looks rugged, but make it quick to put on, fast to take off, as cool as possible, all the stuff that you need to consider that there's a human in this costume.
It was also a very uncomfortable suit. Oscar constantly was very hot, so we had cold water piped in through tubes. Whenever we were done shooting a sequence, we would have someone with a tank full of cold water that we would plug him into.
I basically had a pit crew, and they would just come in and try to take it off in between takes, and they got so fast with it.
Good morning, how's it going, buddy? Good to see you.
The makeup that they have him in is unbelievable. It is awesome and scary, and he looks terrifying and really powerful, and it's easy to work with, you know? You're definitely freaked out when Oscar's there on set.
For the look of Apocalypse, I obviously first addressed the comic book, and then tried to create a sense of makeup that could bring out Oscar Isaac's performance.
It's a 6-piece prosthetic with overlapping skull caps and headpieces and face pieces, so it's intensive. The prosthetics for Apocalypse are all silicone face pieces, so you can keep them very thin, they're very supple, so they move with him and transfer the subtle detail of any of his movements so that he can act through it as well.
The makeup was an incredible job. By the end of it, we got down to about an hour it took for them to put that makeup on and take it off, which at first it started at 4 hours.
The color of the skin was really fascinating because what we discovered in makeup is that depending on what light you put on the makeup, it completely changed the color of the character. So I think it brings a complexity, interest to the character. And I don't think it betrays the comic.
With these films, you have to kind of heighten the stakes each time and have bigger, better, badder villains, and I think he is that.